Well, Robert, you were the last one in the door. Would you open us with a word of prayer?
I'm delighted.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the ability to be here today and sharing your word and opening up our eyes and see the beauty in your kingdom. Allow us to understand, allow us to love, allow us to be who you want us to be in your service. In the name of the Father and Holy Spirit.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So we are on Matthew chapter 13 today, and I went ahead and sent you part one, and then the sort of extra helpful little bonus thing in the middle, and then part two that we'll do next week. Because this is kind of hard stuff. Okay? And my first little thing on your part one handout, a word about discovery versus disquisition. Did anybody look, other than Kathy, look up the word disquisition? It's like
use the word
Oh.
describe discovery.
So what is disquisition, Kathy?
A detailed explanation of a particular subject. It could be an elaborate essay or it could be verbal.
So what is the difference between discovery as a learning method versus disquisition as I'll say as a teaching method? Which do you think is more effective?
Like Montessori versus old-fashioned memorization.
Yeah, I think about like interactive kinds of learning compared to, I will now read to you from Aristotle's On Tragedy. You know, that's what lectures were, was literally someone with the book reading the book to the class because you didn't have the book, right? The Sermon on the Mount is kind of disquisition. Parables allow for discovery.
Discovery is more important if you want your learners to be effective in learning.
Exactly. And it also teaches a way of thinking. If you just core dump all the information, all you've taught the brain to do is upload. But if you ask the brain to work with this information or this material, then you're actually teaching the brain how to think. And I want us to keep in mind that that's what Jesus is doing with these parables. It's not just a core dump of information, but Jesus is asking us to go through a process of thinking. Another way to describe that would be it's calling us to a decision-making process. And Kathy last week told us the parable of the weeds, so you don't have to do it again.
Just in case you ask.
Yeah.
I missed it.
Go to the YouTube channel.
Right.
She did a great job. So Jesus tells this parable of the weeds. We've heard this parable of the weeds, right? Sometimes called the wheat and the tares. Tares were the specific weed that was sowed into this landowner's field. Did the disciples understand the parable? No, they didn't. And if they didn't, and they were standing right there and they hung around with Jesus all the time, they followed him around. If they didn't get it, should we expect to understand it easily? No, right? No, we shouldn't. This is discovery. This is not disquisition. This is material you have to work with. Question: how many parables appear in Matthew?
Wow.
23.
Yeah, 23. Smart aleck. It's 23. Some people say 25 because they count some of the metaphors as parables. I don't buy that. I'm like, doesn't a parable have to have a narrative, a priest, a rabbi, and a plumber walk into a bar, right? That gives that you can build a parable out of that, but just some sort of simile or something that's not, to me, that's not a parable. I think most of us expect it to be a narrative. So yeah, 23 is generally what people say. But how about in Mark? How many are there?
2.
You're just being silly to be silly. Yeah, it's exactly. And again, depending on how you count them, right? So who puts more weight and more value on parables? Matthew, right? They're really important to Matthew. Mark is the action gospel.
Yeah.
Matthew, Jesus is principally a teacher. He is a teacher. It is a teacher's gospel. Remember, it is Jesus' authoritative words that give meaning and justification and validity to his mighty deeds, right? In Mark, it's the other way around. But his teaching is of paramount importance. Now, how many of those parables are unique to Matthew?
2.
11.
Okay.
Exactly, 11. Yeah, 11. And I gave you the opportunity to kind of see if you could remember what they are. And then gave you the key on the second page, right? The weeds and the wheat, the hidden treasure, the pearl of great price, the dragnet, the unforgiving servant, the laborers in the vineyard, the 2 sons, which granted is a lot like the prodigal son, but not the same story. The wedding banquet, the 10 virgins, the talents, which is also a lot like the parable of the minas in Luke, but it's different. And then the parable of the sheep and the goats are all unique to Matthew. And so we've already said what that tells us how important these parables are to Matthew, which is not just the parables themselves that are important, but also, again, the thinking process that they teach and encourage and invite and expect and even demand, right? He's wanting us to think about this stuff and wanting us to learn how to think about this stuff. Now, where does this chapter 13 that is just chock full of parables, where does it appear in the Gospel of Matthew?
Close to the middle.
Smack dab in the middle. Yeah. If you have your, Ruth's got it. This really wonderful outline by the Bible Project. It is smack dab in the middle of the book. 2 things are really important in any narrative composition, right? The denouement, where things finally end up, and whatever happens in the very center. So this is really important. So let's think about what they are. What is a parable? What's the Greek root of the word that we translate as parable? Parabole is the Greek parabole, and it's from the 2 roots of that para, like parallel, parabolic, means alongside, and bole means to throw. It's the same root as what word in English? Bole, and we throw it. Ball and bowling, yeah, right, ballistic. Right, to throw. So it literally means to throw 2 things next to each other. And that gives voice to the fact that it may be 2 things that don't really naturally belong next to each other. You kind of throw them together. Jesus saying the kingdom of heaven is like a guy that had a wedding banquet. The kingdom of heaven is like right? They're things that aren't really like each other, but you throw them together. That you don't think about. It's not like horse and carriage, love and marriage. It's not those peanut butter and jelly. It's not those things that you naturally put together. It's two things that you throw together for the purposes of comparison. So a parable is bringing together two things that don't naturally fit together. And again, most people would say in a narrative. Now, when we think about parables, we tend to think of them as nice little stories, right? Faith of a mustard seed. Doesn't that just make you feel good? You just have the faith of a mustard seed. That just makes you feel so good, right? You teach them to children, right? We tend to think of them as being kind of like Aesop's fables, right? That have a moral point, right? That's not what Jesus is doing with these stories. They are far more demanding and far more sophisticated than a simple fable. Let's look at chapter 13, verses 13 through 16. Does Jesus intend for these to be nice, simple, illustrative analogies? Somebody read for us chapter 13, verses 13 through 16.
This is why I speak to them in parables, because speaking they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. With them indeed is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which says, "You shall indeed hear, but never understand. You shall indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are heavy of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should perceive with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn for me to heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear."
Thank you. So does Jesus here say, I tell parables so that they will be simple and comforting?
No.
No, he tells parables because the people's ears have grown dull. If your listener has become dull, do you lecture to them?
Probably not.
No, right. You've got to do something that shakes them up. I always felt sorry for professors who had to teach right after lunch, right? Because everybody's sleepy. And if they stood there and lectured to you, that's it. Game over, right? But if they interact with you to get you awake again, then you might learn something. You might. Right? So Jesus knows his audience. He is talking to people who have been lectured to, who have heard this rote message, and whose ears have become dull. And he's got to shake them up. And he's also very aware that some of them don't want to hear. They're very happy in their dullness, right? How does this go along with some things that Jesus has already told us about his ministry? Somebody read for us chapter 10, verse 34.
Thank God that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword.
Thank you. Jesus is coming to cut things apart. Not to just go, hey, everything's coming up roses, gumdrops, lollipops, unicorns, and little heart bubbles, right? He came to shake things up. Look at 11:25 and 26. Somebody read that for us.
At that time, Jesus said, "I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will."
Thank you. If you want somebody to learn, to understand something, and they think they're a smart person, they may be a smart person. What is it that that smart person cannot resist solving? Puzzles. Puzzles. If you want a smart person or somebody who thinks they're smart or somebody who thinks they're wise to learn something, give them a puzzle. they will not be able to resist it. My husband can tell you, I am an addict to that little New York Times puzzle app. I've got to solve those puzzles every day.
All of them.
Yeah, except Pips. And that's not like that
That
would.
would fix.
Yeah. I like the first two, but then the third one is hard and then it just takes, and then I spend too much time
Yeah,
on it.
I abandoned the third one. Like,
Yeah.
God, I don't want to take the time.
Yeah, exactly. It takes too much time. Right. So, and that's illustrative here, right? You can't make it too hard. People will abandon it. But it also says something that we abandon it,
Mhm.
right? It's not that important to us.
Mhm.
So if you abandon these, that says something about you, right? Teaching with questions, teaching with puzzles, teaching with discovery ain't easy, and it does not allow the student to be lazy. And if the student does decide to be lazy, well, there you go. You learn something about the student. These parables call people to think, to discern, to discover, and to decision. They put people on edge. And you can't just sit on the edge. You can't sit on a fence. You got to go one way or the other. If it's a sword, if it's really sharp, you can't just sit there. You're going to have to go one way or the other.
Bob Dylan says, you're either for him or against him. There ain't no neutral ground.
Right, right. Which is, of course, what Jesus says himself, right? So these, we should not expect them to be comforting. We should not expect them to be easy. So let's dive back into one of the parables that we've already heard, the parable of the weeds. And what? Tell me, what is it that the workers want to do in the parable of the weeds? Somebody read for us chapter 13, verse 27. Kathy, that was your baby, so why don't you read that?
Oh,
verse
right.
to us?
28.
You want just 27 or about 27, 28?
Yeah, 28 too.
Okay. And the slaves
Thank
of,
you.
sure. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in the field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them?
Thank you. So they want to
Well, no.
pull them out. When?
Right now.
Right now. But the owner says what in 29 and the first part of 30? What does he say? Somebody read that for us.
No, he answered, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn.
Thank you. So when does the householder want things to happen?
At harvest.
At the harvest. Now, if you're a good Jew living in the 81st century in Palestine, you know that the harvest is a metaphor for what?
Judgment Day.
There you go. Right. You know that. You know that. So you hear this story and you hear these servants. These servants want to do what? They want to they want to rush Judgment Day. They want judgment now. The field owner's concern is you'll hurt the good crop if you do this. So who decides when there will be a harvest? The owner of the field, God, the owner of the field. When will the kingdom come? Exactly. When Jesus says so, when God says so. Jesus would say when God says so. Claiming the kingdom of heaven. Not on human terms. Now let's look at the interpretation. The allegorical interpretation, which is in 36 to 43, does it have the same point? Somebody read for us chapter 13, verses 40 to 43.
Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so it will be at the close of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and throw them into the furnace of fire. There men will weep and gnash their teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear.
Thank you. What is the emphasis of the interpretation?
Getting the good separated from the bad.
And what do you want to be? The
Good.
good, right? The emphasis here is that judgment is coming and you need to be the wheat.
You have to open up your ears.
Yes, yes. Hold that thought. Put that on a hook in your brain. Yes. Say it again.
You have to open up your ears.
Yeah, hold that thought. You're gonna have to hold it even till next week.
Better write it down.
Yeah, right. You're gonna be like, Kathy. So Matthew does something here that's stunning and brilliant and difficult. Is he's presenting to us two layers of how to use this story. One is about the coming of the kingdom and who is in authority over the coming of the kingdom. And the coming of the kingdom will come on God's terms. And in interpretations, and we're going to see this repeatedly, interpretations that focus on where are you in that process. There's almost a double decision process that he's putting us through. Let's look at the parable exemplar, which is the parable of the seed or the parable of the sower or the parable of the soils. And what you call this says a lot about how you're interpreting it, right? We all know this, right? The sower goes out to sow and he casts on all these different kinds of soil, and most of it doesn't make it. Some of it does, right? And there's a harvest. Now, if we look at the parable itself, which is in verses 1 through 8, the story draws a stark contrast between two things. So somebody read for us first, verses 3 through 7.
Chapter 13.
Yes.
He spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some weeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell up in stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them.
Thank you. So far, how is the harvest going? Badly, very badly, right? And then somebody read for us verse 8, just verse 8.
Still other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown.
Thank you. Is that normal? A 30-fold or a 60-fold or a 100-fold?
I have no idea.
No idea. I don't think so.
It's not at all, right? It's unprecedented.
I mean, if you plant one seed and you get one plant and it has what, 100 grains of meat on it, but I have no idea how they calculate.
The purpose here is is to show a miraculous yield. It is a miraculous yield.
Even the 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you compare that, you contrast that with what was going on before. What kind of harvest is going on in the rest of the story? Zilcho. And notice that the reason there's zilcho is because there's opposition to the seed, right? The sun, the thorns, path, there's opposition to the seed. But despite the opposition, there's this miraculous harvest. There is a harvest. The emphasis here is on the success of the harvest despite the bad conditions. This would have been a very accessible parable to people from that Jesus was talking to. People even suggest Jesus might have gone, see, look over there. See that guy? He's gone out to sow. We have a hard time understanding this because we have a concept that you get all the rocks out, you plow the field, you turn the earth, you till the earth, you fertilize the earth, then you put in the seeds, then you come back, you water, you weed, you all this kind of stuff. We're able to manage the ground itself. They weren't able to do that. They don't have the steel plow. They don't own oxen or horses or mules or John Deere tractors. They got what they got. They don't have leather gauntlets to help them go out and pull thorns up without getting cut to pieces. They got what they got. They throw the seed out and they hope for the best. So this was a not unrealistic scenario. And any farmer would have understood it's a miracle we ever get a crop at all because everything is against us. The weather's against us, the ground's against us, everything's against us. Okay. So the emphasis here in the parable itself is on the fact that there is a harvest despite all the conditions being against us.
So it doesn't actually say that the good soil had any opposition. So you might wonder if that's why, or it's kind of unfair, right? Oh, gee, I was a path and I didn't have a chance.
Because that's not the point of the story at this point. It's not that I am on the path or I am in the thorns. The point is the seed.
The seed did its thing.
The seed is going to bear fruit regardless of opposition.
Okay. And the seed is considered a whole, not all the parts of it that go in different places.
The seed is what is cast. Yeah, is what is cast.
In general, the seed
The seed-
made a good showing.
The seed,
Even
well,
though
and
some of it was wasted here, there, and there.
the seed is going to bear fruit.
I think we have to go back and think how they would think about it.
Yes.
It's, we've got, like those of us that plant flowers or, or food or things like that, we have such a different perspective. And they just, that part, they, oh, seeds. I hope they take root. That was it.
Exactly.
And so we have the scientific knowledge and information that it's centuries before they're going to get it.
Exactly. We also have the concept of the self, of the individual.
Did they know what the seed was?
No. I mean, they knew that there's something in it that gives life, but did they have any idea of what the process of germination was? Absolutely not.
No, but I mean, the real, like he said, they didn't have eyes, they didn't have ears.
Yeah.
Did they know what he was talking about when he said the seed?
Well, did the disciples get this story?
No.
No, right. No, they didn't.
Okay.
They didn't. And so, yeah, that's why I said this is hard, and I'm going to make you discover this.
would you say that what it may be trying to say is that because when you fall into fertile ground, which is in faith, you grow exponentially in where now when you get ascended to the kingdom of heaven, you are now thankful.
You're in the interpretation. You are squarely in the interpretation that Jesus is going to give, which just as the wheat and the tares is distinct from the parable itself. We live in the time of the church, and we are thinking about our own discipleship. That's how we read these stories. That's how Matthew's church is being told to read these stories. When they're presented, they're about the kingdom. But you are absolutely right. That is a beautiful, the medievals would be thrilled with that reading because it is that metaphorical, spiritual reading of what we mean by this 30, 60, 100-fold. Yeah. Let's look at the interpretation. Jesus' interpretation focuses on what? And Robert, actually, oh yeah, you get to do it this week. Okay. Chapter 13, verse 18. Read that for us.
Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower.
And then read verse 20.
But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and with joy receiveth it.
Then read verse 22.
He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and he care for this world.
And then verse 23.
But he that receiveth the seed into the good ground, and he that heareth the word of understandeth, it also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
Thank you. What's the verb that you heard every single verse, every single time?
Here's.
Hears. The interpretation focuses on how the hearer responds to the message. This is related to the kingdom message of the parable. The kingdom message of the parable is the seed will bear fruit, no matter the opposition. The interpretation is you want to be the fruit-bearing part. They're related, they're similar, but they're distinct. Let's look for a second at the plot here to see why does Matthew put this here? What has Jesus been encountering in chapters 11 and 12 repeatedly?
Growing hostility.
Exactly. Gotta love those little non-canonical headers that people put in for us, right? Hostility and opposition. So what did the seed encounter in the parable?
Opposition.
Opposition. What did the landowner encounter to his timetable in the parable of the weeds?
Slaves.
Opposition from his own employees.
The enemy was an employee.
Well, no.
No, from the evil one.
Well, the evil ones sowed a bad seed, but what did the employees want to
They
do?
wanted to go ahead and take
They thought they did.
But the evil one
Yeah, the evil one,
was separate
an enemy
from
sowed.
his people.
Yeah, an enemy sowed bad seed, but the additional opposition that he has to deal with is from his own employees who want to run things their way.
I think when I read this parable, I always focused on, like, I don't even know if I focused so much on the harvest. So I took this one much more literally. who is this enemy? Why did
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then it isn't that terrible. But
Yeah,
okay, and then you get to the end and it's separating, and I can see that. But I never thought before about why does the landowner want to wait in terms of the interpretation, not in real life what you would do in a crop.
well,
How does it hurt?
because wheat and tares look exactly alike
Hmm,
until they come to fruit.
okay.
So, and he says himself, the landowner says, if you pull up if you go in now, you're going to pull up some of the good crop.
I thought that was just sort of, okay, that's a tear and pulling up that the roots are entangled and you.
There's that too.
Mhm.
But yeah, they look exactly the same. The landowner is concerned about the good
Mhm.
and preserving the good. But all the workers want to do is judge.
So, but going back to the interpretation again, and not plants, how does God waiting to judge the wicked hurt the people who are not wicked?
Because you're trying to blur the interpretation with the parable.
You gotta get you're so smart, and you gotta take that and set it aside and just be, okay, I'm a little kid, now tell me. You know,
Yeah. What
You know.
what did Jesus encountered 2 chapters of opposition? Remember, this is a composed story, right? This is all placed here deliberately. Same way the Sermon on the Mount is, in all likelihood, is a composite sermon. Jesus didn't stand there one day and tell all these parables. No. These all get pulled together. And Matthew puts them here for a reason after 2 chapters of opposition. Of people trying to shut down the kingdom, to shut down Jesus' ministry, often by being judgmental, by trying to take charge of how God runs his religion. And Jesus tells stories that the kingdom will come no matter the opposition, and it will come on God's terms when God says so. And we ain't going to tear up the good fruit in the meantime. There is the interpretation as well. And that's there deliberately too. How did Jesus summarize his teaching in chapter 12, verse 15?
For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother.
Thank you. So the last verse that leads us into chapter 13 is about discipleship, is about doing the will of God. So Matthew, this is an incredible literary craft. Gets 2 topics on our minds before he brings us into chapter 13. One is opposition to the kingdom, and the other is faithful discipleship in the face of opposition. Remember that Matthew's community does seem to be facing tremendous opposition. Probably from the synagogue down the street. What Matthew does is address both the historical question that Jesus was dealing with, the historical opposition that Jesus was dealing with, which was opposition to his kingdom. And his declaration, I am sovereign over it, God is sovereign over it, it's going to come whether you want it to or not, and it's going to come on God's terms. Matthew has also set us up to hear what it means for us as disciples in our own time to thrive in the face of opposition. And that requires decision. Both levels require decision. Are you part of the kingdom or not? Are you a disciple or are you not? If you go to my little middle page, where I resort to disquisition. All of the parables in this chapter will offer a twofold meaning. One that gives voice to Jesus' original telling of the parable, and that's going to be kingdom focused. And one that gives voice to how Matthew uses it to admonish his readers, which is discipleship focused. Both messages speak to the situation of facing conflict. The Spirit speaks through these stories both ways. And the Spirit can also reveal other meanings that reflect and address other life situations of individual believers of the church. Right? These are not dead stories. Right, Ruth, you talk about how you read it. And Kathy talked last week about how I loved it. It was it was almost a fourfold layer of interpretation. There's the parable, there's the biblical interpretation, there's the interpretation in the magazine, The Upper Room, and then there's how you appropriated it. The parables lend themselves to this layered interpretation and application. And that's what Matthew wants to invite us to do. Notice how he closes the chapter in verse 51 and 52, or closes this section, not the chapter. Have you understood all this? They say, oh yeah. And he says to them, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Matthew is very concerned. First, that we are preserving our authentic Jewish heritage. Not a jot or a tittle of the law will pass away. We are also bringing forward what Jesus taught. We are also bringing forward what the Spirit continues to teach us in our life situation as disciples who are facing conflict. And you, reader, you bring forward how the Spirit has spoken to you as well.
I had a little trouble with that. And so I went to Professor Google for anyway, they were talking about communicating the old treasures. And then they talked about the new treasures. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm not getting that. And so I thought this was helpful, as well, I wanted to share it. Anyhow, to be able to communicate the old treasures, which are the Old Testament truths, and the new treasures, which are Jesus's teachings, the gospel to others. That's okay. I get what that is now.
And I would say Matthew agrees with that as far as that goes.
Mhm.
He is inviting us to an additional step.
Okay,
Remember, he's not writing during Jesus' time.
that's true.
He's writing to his congregation, and out of the experience of his congregation, where they are experiencing conflict and opposition to being a disciple and risk of falling away. And so he includes these interpretations of these of these parables that focus on discipleship decisions. The interpretations do not focus on the message that the kingdom will come no matter what.
On the message, what?
That the kingdom will come no matter what. And it will come on God's terms because God is sovereign over his kingdom. The interpretations focus on how we as disciples make decisions in that context of opposition. So he's saying, yeah, there's our Jewish tradition, there is Jesus' message, and there's how the Spirit is speaking to us today in our life situation. And by the way, 2,000 years from now, I'm sure the Spirit is speaking to y'all still. And he expects us to learn how to tell the story in a way that speaks faithfully to our own time. It's not just learn these parables. It's learn how to think like a disciple. That's what makes this really hard. This isn't just learning, oh, you got the faith of a mustard seed. That just makes us feel so good. I have that phrase. I know that phrase. I can haul that out. No, no, no. It's how can I talk in a digital age? How can I talk in a postmodern age? How can I share my faith and be a faithful disciple in the face of opposition and still proclaim the word? How is the Spirit talking to us now about being a disciple? Because if all new is the so-called New Testament, that's old stuff now. Still true. It's still our basis. It's still our foundation. But we need to bring out what is new. And the Spirit leads us into that through the ages. I told you this would be hard stuff.
Could you just explain to me why I struggle with things? You know, I know God's word is true. I know it is, but then I worry about, yeah, but you, God, you know me, you know pranks and things I do. You know, maybe you'll change your mind about me, and I wrestle, you know, and I go back and forth, but I know this is true. I get in my own way all the time. And the Spirit does speak. I mean, there are times where I'll be reading a scripture that I have probably read 1,000 times. And all of a sudden, it's different. Oh, I got something I never got before. And I know that's the Spirit speaking.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, right? We are not a finished work. We are all of us a work in progress. And we will remain a work in progress even once we cross over Jordan. We will always be a work in progress. That's good news. Right? And we can't ever get stuck where we're at. And Ruth, I want to return to your question about the problem of ripping up the wheat and the tares. Is God's kingdom, is Jesus' message principally one of judgment or grace?
It is, but it's grace.
Yeah,
Right, and it's
Yeah.
not over until it's over.
there you go.
Yeah, so it's
There you
too
go.
early to judge them.
Exactly.
Yeah. they
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because how will we know them?
By their fruit.
By their fruits. And the wheat and the tares are absolutely like that. We'll know them by their fruits. So there is grace here. There's grace. Sometimes we try to make parables do too much. The medievals loved to make everything, everything was an allegory. This meant that, this meant that, this meant that, and that doesn't work. And then there are times we try to make it too little. 18th century scholars were all into it has 1 point and only 1 point. Oh no, that's probably too legalistic, I would say. But sometimes we try to make them do more than they're trying to do.
Well, it's just this
Yeah.
part where the good is harmed by pulling out the bad. That's not about the bad, that's about the good.
Exactly.
And how does that help us to be surrounded? So at the end, it's like, oh, that sounds so nice. I will remove all the evil and you
Right.
go on in that sense. So what is it about it that's helping us now?
So again, you're blurring the interpretation into the parable. The parable is saying, I don't want to rip up everything now because I'm extending grace and I'm in charge. The interpretation is completely flipped and is about making sure that you're among the good when the harvest happens. I'm going to say something that's really tough, really, really tough. Most scholars would say Jesus did not say these interpretations, that these are the speakings of the Spirit to the early church. And the early church rightly understood the Spirit is the voice of the Lord. So that this was the Spirit continuing to speak to the needs of the church some 40, 50 years later. Jesus was speaking to his life situation and to what he was doing, which was bringing the kingdom of heaven. That's what he was doing. Matthew is speaking to a congregation that is facing opposition, often from their own family. You're not Jewish anymore because you follow Jesus. He is speaking to a congregation that needs to understand discipleship decision making, which is not just something you teach by rote, it's a process. He's got to teach that process. That's why we're spending 2 weeks on this.
Isn't it that necessary for us as we grow into this feeling of being part of God's kingdom? It is our responsibility also to invite those who are not there and have that conversation and perhaps direct that seed.
Absolutely. And that's part of what Matthew's trying to equip us to do, is teaching us how to bring out of our treasure what is old and what is new. Stories that speak to the situation of your life, of your life setting, how to call people to decision, how to plant seeds. Don't rip up something that is a work in progress. You know, being a disciple is not about ripping up what is planted, what is growing. Yeah. There's so many layers to this chapter.
There's so many times I'm gonna have to re-listen to this.
Well, and we're gonna go back. We'll stay in this chapter next week. Cedric and Bill are gonna tell us 2 of the parables, and we're gonna see this at work again in these other parables. So, but yeah, this is hard, but it's very much at the heart of what Matthew wants us. You're struggling. You are. I can see those. I can see those.
There's too many things.
Yeah, plates spinning, just like on the old advance show. Go in peace to serve the Lord.
You can never find one little thing.